St. Patrick's Day. It's a holiday which many in the Western world recognize and celebrate. Over the years, St. Patrick's Day has taken on a very festive atmosphere, being celebrated in mid-March. On this day, many people wear green in some form. Some will even dye their hair green, paint their teeth green, while others paint temporary tattoos of leprechauns or three-leaf clovers called shamrocks on themselves. Many bars and pubs serve green beer, and restaurants serve green mashed potatoes, while others serve corned beef and cabbage. Well, do any of these things really have anything to do with Patrick himself? Who was this man that we call Saint Patrick? Patrick's given name was actually Maewyn Succat. Contrary to popular belief, history shows that Patrick was Scottish, not Irish. He took the name Patrick most likely because of the area he was from in Scotland. According to the book The Ancient British and Irish Churches on page 127, here's what Patrick himself said of his background. He said, and I'm quoting, "I, Patrick, had Calpornius for my father, a deacon, a son of the late Patitus, the presbyter, who dwelt in the village of Bannavan. I was captured. I was almost 16 years of age, and taken to Ireland in captivity with many thousand men." Unquote. On page 70 of the same reference, it points out that while in slavery, Patrick gave his heart to God, and after 6 years of servitude he escaped, returning to his home in Scotland. But he couldn't forget the spiritual need of the poor heathen which took him captive. So after 10 years he returned to Ireland as a missionary of the Celtic Church. The writings of Patrick himself were very minimal. The things which are now taught about Patrick didn't surface until about 500 years after his death. It was the Catholic priest Jocelyn who wrote most extensively about Patrick around the year 1130 AD, or CE, we would know as the Common Era. The interesting thing is, Jocelyn ignored most of what was known about Patrick, and he inserted a Catholic background into Patrick's story. But the truth is that Patrick in no way followed the Roman Catholic doctrine. Patrick never wrote about a connection to Rome or to the popes. He never stated that his authority came from the Roman Catholic system. So this raises the question, if Patrick wasn't Roman Catholic, what did he teach and believe? Well, according to A.C. Flick, in the book The Rise of the Medieval Church, Patrick rejected the merging of church and state, which is a teaching of Catholicism. He believed and taught the same as Jesus did in John chapter 18, verse 36, which is the truth that God's kingdom is not of this world. The Celtic Church had local ecclesiastical councils and kept Saturday, the biblical Sabbath, as a day of rest. In this matter of a Saturday Sabbath rest, Dr. James C. Moffat wrote this. He said, "They, the Celtic churches, obeyed the fourth commandment, the Sabbath commandment, literally upon the seventh day of the week." There are two books which I'll be referencing here. One is The Celtic Church in Britain, written by Leslie Hardinge, and the other is Truth Triumphant by B.G. Wilkinson. Both of these books show that Patrick rejected the teaching of an immortal soul. In other words, the doctrine that when we die, we go to heaven or hell right away, but we return to the dust, as the Bible teaches. And contrary to what most people have been told, Patrick rejected the doctrine of the Trinity, which is a doctrine created by the Catholic Church. He followed the food laws of Leviticus chapter 11 and Deuteronomy chapter 14 about eating only meats which are clean before God. He refused to venerate or worship the so-called saints and the worship of Mary as well. Patrick believed that only Jesus Christ is our mediator. More than that, in his book Truth and Triumphant, the one that we were just reading a little excerpt from by B.G. Wilkinson, he also shares that it was in 596 A.D. that Pope Gregory sent a group of monks to England to try to bring the Celtic Church under the authority of Rome. But the Celts refused to acknowledge Gregory's authority and rejected all of the teachings of the Roman Church, which were not biblical. In Ireland, the monks found that the Celtic Church permitted their priests to marry. This is something that Catholics don't allow. They also practiced, the Celtics that is, also practiced baptism by full immersion in water. The Catholics do not. They sprinkle. The Celtic Church also rejected the doctrine of the infallibility of the Pope and the veneration or worship of the Pope. They rejected the teaching of transubstantiation. That's a big word you may not have heard of, but transubstantiation is a doctrine which teaches that the bread and the wine, known to Catholics as the Eucharist, literally change into the body and blood of Christ. And we're talking about the bread and wine that's used at communion. They believe that it literally changes to the body and blood of Christ. The Celtic Church rejected the teaching of the confessional, the Mass, relic worship, image adoration, and the primacy of Peter. According to Irish folklore, Patrick was a Catholic monk who used the shamrock to explain the doctrine of the Trinity to the Irish people, and he drove snakes from the Emerald Isle while he was going there. He became so renowned that the Catholic Church made him a saint. And as we can see, that's not true, just based on the information that we provided just before. Well, all of this brings us to the question, is St. Patrick's Day in the Bible? Well, the answer is no. St. Patrick's Day is not a biblical holiday, nor is it a holy day. And as it's currently celebrated, St. Patrick's Day actually has nothing to do with the historical man Patrick. In fact, it's almost entirely based upon error. Many holidays which we consider to be of Christian origin are a mixture of truth and error. This is what happened in the Garden of Eden with Adam and Eve. There was a mixture of truth and error which caused Eve to sin. That's what caused mankind to fall. And because of this truth and error being mixed into holidays, most people have no idea as to the history or the purpose of the days that they are honoring and celebrating. Friends, I want to encourage you to read what God says in the Bible so that you can know which day or which days that He made holy. Not man-made days, but the days that God made holy. John chapter 4, verses 23 and 24 says, "But the hour cometh, and now is, when the true worshippers shall worship the Father in spirit and in truth. For the Father seeketh such to worship Him. God is a spirit, and they that worship Him must worship in spirit and in truth." If we are going to worship our Creator in spirit and in truth, we need to examine the holidays that we're celebrating. We need to make sure that they are in line with what God requires. And if they can't be found in the Bible, if He isn't mandating or suggesting even that we celebrate these holidays and they're rooted in things that are part of false worship, we need to ask ourselves, is this something that I should be celebrating personally? Friends, this is a decision that you have to make on your own. Nobody can tell you one way or the other. But my prayer is that you will consider these things, and as you examine the rest of the holidays that man has made versus the ones that God has made, that you will take a stand for the truth of the Most High God.